I'm Chloe from BT Media. Today we would have an interview with Brand Seir, Chief Commercial Officer at Kacific Broadband Satellites. And now let's begin our first questions. Kacific has rapidly expanded its coverage to 25 markets. So what have been the biggest challenges and success in achieving this scale, and how do you plan to sustain this growth?
Chloe, thank you so much for having us. So just to give you a bit of more background to add a little bit more flow to the question, I think you've asked the right question, and it's quite an interesting environment as we have expanded the company in the last 4 years. We started back in 2013. The first satellite was launched in 2019. That's the satellite that covers 25 countries. Today, we actually cover 27 countries. We have expanded in markets like Pakistan and Afghanistan as well. Kacific is really seen as an infrastructure provider. Satellite is one of the infrastructures that we provide, connectivity. We also do parts of the business is expanded to offer services like managing towers, managing power, offering infrastructure, power as service or tower as service, just because Kacific has expanded into rural networks helping telecom operators in the last 4 years. So to backtrack, 4 years ago, we really started with the notion to connect as many people as we can in Asia Pacific, markets like Indonesia and Philippines are probably the largest markets today in Asia Pacific in our portfolio, following by markets like Pakistan. We have got places like Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, and the rest of the Pacific. Primarily, we started working with telecom operators to expand their number of sites in the rural areas. So we call the service mobile backhaul. We basically backhaul the voice and data of the telecom operators in the rural areas. With this service, we have got today probably about 25% of our business portfolio is mobile backhaul. We then started working with the governments. We connect many governments, mainly on the health sector, telecom health sector. So you're looking at clinics, you're looking at connectivity of schools, community centers, and then further down the chain, you're also looking at e-governance, where the government encourages other departments of the government to be connected. So we have the likes of court officers connected, we have the likes of finance ministries connected, we have all sides of government, depending on which country we work with. We have got basically different type of relationships or partnerships with the government. In Indonesia, for instance, with our two internet service providers, we connect schools, community centers, and clinics through the Bhakti, which is basically the Ministry of Communications initiative for the USO funded projects to connect as many people as they can. We do the same in Philippines, and we have been doing the same in the rest of the Pacific. What's also important to remember, among all those two segments, we have seen that the government and the telcos require managed services provided end to end, basically packaged with satellites. So that's where we have come in to manage larger projects. We have just launched a project of 450 sites in the Philippines. We managed that to the end, and we handed over that to the government. It basically offers Wi-Fi connectivity. Similar to that, we have done about 1,200 sites for the government in the Philippines. In Indonesia, we have done about 2,500 sites. And just to go a bit further from the government, so the third segment that we have worked with is just connectivity of the businesses, enterprises, and you're looking at basically an end-to-end packaged enterprise-grade service that offers connectivity and it's flexible to give you basically integration to any other network. So we're talking about network operability. Basically, if they have existing networks, we come in to give them connectivity, then we offer power with it, which gives them access to solar power and green power. And then from there, we try to see if we can manage their remote businesses and branches. And so we have all kinds of businesses in our portfolio, from banks all the way to basically managing smaller logistics businesses, manufacturing, and go down to the value chain where construction businesses are there. What you will see in Kacific is quite a different operations than the traditional service providers. We have got over 450 distributors, and these are the likes of appliance resellers, computer resellers, air condition resellers, air condition maintenance people. We have trained these people in the Philippines, Indonesia, and Papua New Guinea to resell the service, but also maintain and install the service. Last but not least, one specific thing you would realize in these 25 countries would be the power of natural disaster. You would have, unfortunately, the likes of tornadoes, the likes of earthquakes in every other country. So what we have done is we have developed in the last 4 years in-house an entire suite of emergency solutions. With the emergency solutions, what we have done is we basically have motorized our own 1.2 meter antennas and our own 75 cm antennas, whereas outside the industry it will basically cost tens of thousands of dollars actually to procure one unit, not even few units. With us, with less than $2,000, you can now get a motorized antenna, standard antenna that actually connects to the satellite. And we have produced this in-house, we have designed this in-house. The same way, we have had another suite of product that's actually called CommsBox. With CommsBox, what you do is you basically effectively connect with a maritime antenna, batteries, as well as an auto-pointing system. You connect directly to the satellite anywhere, and you've got a system that includes its own power, so you can take the system anywhere and it will basically work. So as you can see, we have tapped different segments of the market. We are very, very different. And now we have basically added another segment that's just infrastructure as a service. So if a telecom operator wants to go to a remote area and they don't have a site, we go build the entire suite of the site for them with the satellite. And they basically come with their frequency and become a host, and they offer their services in those areas. So that's what we do. That's a bit of an introduction, but also the question flows where what Kacific has done in these 25 countries.
Okay, so like you said, so how does Pacific differentiate itself from other players in this industry? So it's like that the strong network you mentioned, and also the infrastructure services, and also like emergency solutions. Are this your key like advantage over other players?
So we live in a very interesting time. You have a lot of investment coming into the satellite industry. You have investment coming into the infrastructure industry. You have also investment coming into the green power industry. However, there isn't a partner or there isn't a service provider that can offer all of them end to end and produce the connectivity in-house basically with the solutions that the region requires. So we are a regional operator. We differentiate ourselves in terms of integrating different technologies and offering those as a service. So as I said before, one thing that's quite unique with us is today we offer infrastructure, connectivity, power as a service, and that's all integrated in one go to the governments, to the enterprises, as well as to the telecom operator. So it's quite a different offer. We are not after the traditional or vocational satellite communications, because that's where a lot of companies just offer services, either on the wholesale level or on the franchise level. In general, in both levels, we don't usually compete with them because our customers are usually either governments, telcos, or we offer basically flexible solutions that's customizable or tailored to the businesses, where the businesses see the value of network interoperability, the customization of the two technologies, and ensuring that the technology is effective for the business. So for instance, I can give you an example. When you go into a construction company, the requirements of the construction company versus a mining company are very different. You've got a construction company that basically requires mobility and communications on a construction site, and then they want basically the likes of a 4G service, a closed user group 4G service within that construction site for, let's say, 10 to 12 months. They don't need permanent connectivity, whereas a mining company has entirely a different communication system where they require, let's just say, Internet of Things or IoT sensors to basically see their production. They produce certain material on daily basis that they need to report. Then you have to connect their offices, and then you have to offer 4G. So in general, for each of those segments, we have tailored solutions that basically differentiates us from all the other operators in the market.
So let's say that we will achieve a 30% revenue market share in the satellite industry. So can you like elaborate on the strategies that you want to, how to like achieve this goal?
I think the best word would be to say we are basically very flexible, and we have gone down to the value chain to do what others don't like to do. We provide services that other satellite operators stay away from it. We provide services that telecom operators stay away from it. The telecom operators are interested in covering a large pool of population in a capital city or in an urban area. The ISPs or internet service providers, because of the way the density of population is, they're interested to be in the cities. You have seen the satellite operators, they like to work with the likes of wholesalers or wholesale providers. We go down to the value chain. We are in the remote areas. We find our presence there. We control the value chain, and then we make sure we have the control of the distribution. It's also that in each of these 25 countries, we leave quite a big chunk of revenue behind because we basically work with the internet service providers, with the local distributors, with local telcos to make sure we understand the challenge they have. By going down to the value chain, we have now access to communicate better. We also have access to basically procure the right technology to the right business requirement. But then more than that, you would also see that we offer maintenance services for sites in very difficult areas and places like Western PNG, where nobody wants to be there to manage a site for fuel, electricity, lease of the land, and then finally connectivity. That's where we see ourselves a good fit, because we find ourselves very strong in these regions, to be honest with you. And our presence secures a good 30% of that revenue. Now, when it comes to a 30% revenue share, you would have to look at the market from a different perspective. The market has got potential of larger revenue scales. When you scale these services, you're looking at a 30% service revenue, which includes power, which includes basically management of sites, which includes management of end-to-end enterprise systems. So have we secured that? In most segments we have, and in some segments even more. For instance, in government, in most governments we have actually done a fantastic rollout where it has secured us quite a large chunk of their budgeted revenue in some of the larger markets. Primarily because we offer managed services and we offer service, connectivity as a service plus the infrastructure as a service. And the good example is Philippines. The other example would be Papua New Guinea and the likes of places like Tuvalu and hopefully new markets being added in the list.
So, talking about the leveraging managed service partnerships and the sales partner development to enhance its market presence. So, what criteria do you consider when forming these partnerships?
So for us, we usually screen the partners based on their presence and based on their reach. Accessibility is very important, right? So market access is one issue to be resolved, which we usually go and do that, deal with the market access ourselves by investing, by working with the country and the governments and the regulators. Accessibility is a whole different challenge in these markets. Whereas if you connect a clinic with internet, it doesn't really mean the internet that you've provided to the clinic is being used by the clinic, because the clinic then requires infrastructure like a computer, they require power, then you have to start dealing with digital literacy. So for people to use basically the infrastructure that's provided to them. So accessibility is very important. We stress on accessibility when it comes to partnerships. That's why we have all these distributors in these markets where they basically provide trainings, they provide maintenance, they provide sales trainings. They even go down to the customers to install their terminals and install other systems like power, or install basically integrated network system, or procure them even access to a data center so that they can have basically ability to cloud save their data or protect their data. So in that range, we look at partners differently. We look at their reach, we look at their strength, we look at how much they can invest in certain solutions with us. We also look at the partners in terms of scale and number of people, and that's exactly why we have partners in different levels.
And also, with increasing demand for reliable broadband in remote and undeserved regions, how is Kacific positioning itself to meet this demand, and what roles does innovation play in this product development strategy?
I think we are living in an era where connectivity is not called connectivity anymore, it's connectivity 2.0. It's basically a next generation connectivity model, and you have to be very creative when it comes to that. Living in the city, you would realize that you have access to fiber, you have access to 4G, you have access to 5G, you have access to fixed broadband, and not necessarily all the choices of technologies that I've just mentioned to you are the best choice of technology in the remote area. You need to be affordable in the remote areas. You need to make sure people have access to the right device and the affordable device, because just in the remote areas, the economy is quite different. So you're looking at us basically evaluating these technologies in different areas. We go with a lot of community Wi-Fi today with a range of 300 meters or so, different access points, different sites. But then we are looking into fixed broadband now. Fixed broadband has not been explored by operators. It has not been explored by service providers. It's a fantastic offer in the remote areas to basically change or upgrade your Wi-Fi to fixed broadband. Once you get to the fixed broadband, hopefully then you have a range of 10 kilometers. You have basically survived with the operators in the region to host them in the site, but also offer affordable connectivity to the people in the area. With this, you would also save at least 60 to 70% of your subscription cost or subscriber cost from having a Wi-Fi system to a fixed broadband with a range of 10 kilometers. I'm talking about more LTE, I'm talking about 4G type of broadband, whereas we can use the frequencies of the telcos or one of the USO funded frequencies. So it's very, very important to pick the right technology in the right places, because you have unserved areas and then you have served areas and you have underserved areas. And in underserved areas, some of these technologies exist, it's just that they're not reliable. You have areas today that fiber is out 30% of time, and people can't afford to basically have satellites. So what they do is they just live with having no connectivity for 30% of the time. So making it affordable, making it accessible is the game to play, and this is a long-term game. And so fortunately we have the ability now to assess this.
And also now tracing back that 2020 and 2021 retail customer campaigns was significant focus for Kacific. So what were the key learnings from these campaigns and how are they shaping your future marketing and business development initiatives?
Sure. So two different key learnings from there. Having price transparency in the market is very, very important. Once you have the control and distribution chain, having a transparent price in every country is very important. Otherwise, you would have partners who actually put 50 to 60 or 70 or 100% margin on selling a solution. When that happens, like a monopoly. And when that happens, unfortunately, we would be sitting with a lot of capacity or infrastructure, and it would not be sold just because the capacity and infrastructure is always expensive. So price transparency was the first thing. The second important thing is awareness. We're dealing with population that are not reachable with social media. They're not reachable easily through basically the traditional ways of marketing. So we had to be very, very creative. We had to go down the route of TV, radio, and we even had to go now down the route of roadshows. So we basically have a moving roadshow in different parts of cities or islands or provinces, as you may call it, to basically invite people and educate them. And education is very important. They might not require it today, but you have to create that solution for them and show it to them so that when they have the right economy skill to basically apply that to them. In general, in most of these areas, what you have seen is basically a 1.2 meter antenna that offers bandwidth to people with some access point. Now we have gone beyond that, right? So we have seen these lessons and we have basically the ability to tailor make the requirement in each place. And so those are the good learnings from the last 4 years.
So, in your experience, what are the critical factors for success when managing direct and indirect sales channels, and especially in those different markets across different countries?
Sure. So one thing to first focus on would be to understand the economy of each market well before basically going and launching in a market. The reason behind that is because the economy is directly tied to the regulatory environment. The economy is directly tied to the percentage of people being able to pay for a premium service. Then the second most important thing to basically consider there is having the right partnership in every country. The partnership, having a partnership in one country doesn't mean you can have the same similar model in each country. So flexibility in models are very important. Understanding customer behavior and the power of purchase of those customers are very important. And we have done quite a lot of work in those areas to basically keep the partners aligned with us to understand the potential market as well.
So, how does Kacific ensure that marketing strategy aligns with overall business objectives? I mean, the roles that creativity is achieving this market demand generation.
That's a very good question because a lot of the satellite operators don't really have a marketing function in their business. The telecom operators have a marketing function in their business, very, very segmented. When they sell to public, they market to public. When they sell to businesses, they market to businesses. So our marketing function is very different from the marketing function of other companies. We market based on ROI, so return on investment. We look at each product as a return on investment with a funnel to basically see how we can educate people against it. There's a lot of mix of business to business, business to consumer, business to government. And I think the best tactic on that is to look at each segment very differently. There isn't a broad marketing communications strategy that works for all the segments. You have to have very, very different plans for each one of them. One thing we have realized across the line is basically coming to events and putting our own events and roadshows are the best if you're selling to businesses and if you're selling to government. However, if you're selling to public, then you're stepping into a whole different segment in these areas, which the same plan would not work in either country. What we have realized is in most of the smaller places where ISPs or internet service providers don't really have the budget and time to market, we go and get a license and we start hiring people directly to start our own company. A good example of that is Timor-Leste. Nobody wanted to start business with us in Timor-Leste. We started business about 3 years ago. Today we have a base of over 400 customers now. So you can see that if you put the milestones and the right stepping stones, there is potential in these markets, but then you have to do it the right way where you have the control on value chain, you have the control on products and the price.
So, can you share any insights and upcoming strategies, projects, or produce some new product developments that Kacific is working on to further solidify its position in this industry?
Sure. So we're going to focus a lot in the next 18 to 36 months further developing and capitalizing on emergency solutions. We have now a suite of emergency solutions. We have something called a SAT pack, which is probably 90% cheaper than any other SAT pack or man pack in the industry produced by ourselves. We're going to focus on completing the production line for those because we have to produce those internally. And then we will have to segment the emergency solutions. So we have expensive emergency solutions and then we have got entirely affordable emergency solutions. When it comes to expensive ones, these are basically engineered for the specific operations like humanitarian operations, government operations, and the likes of mining operations. When it comes to affordable ones, anybody can afford it. Even myself living in a remote area or a capital of a city, I can afford basically to have, let's say, a range of $2,000 a SAT pack that can achieve the speeds of 15 Bps and I can be connected and it's a peace of mind at the end, it's insurance, right? So really focusing on building and capitalizing on emergency solutions. The second area we're developing further is really power as a service, green power as a service, especially for telecom infrastructure. So we are building a portfolio of power as a service, infrastructure as a service, and connectivity as a service, which we need to merge them well together and deploy them in different areas. Again, throughout these sessions in different conferences, we've been calling out on telecom operators to come and work with us because we have the satellite, we can go and find the infrastructure, we can go and place a site, but then they have the power to expand and they have the understanding of where to go. So that's the second area we're going to focus, and you would see quite a lot of innovation and creativity about that. We are a very ambitious company, so you may actually see us in other spheres like power. You may actually see us in infrastructure areas or portfolios like data center, or even further than that, we may actually start offering basically other services that may be related to telecoms, but may also differ from the current segmentation of the products.
Okay, thanks. Now come to the last questions. So looking ahead, what are your long-term goals for Kacific, and also particularly in terms of expanding your market share and continuing to innovate with the evolving satellite broadband sector?
A global service provider that basically offers any type of managed service that could become a powerful infrastructure connectivity distributor, but also removing all the barriers of cost in different places.
So that's all the questions for today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, Brandon.